All right, folks, good evening. And it is the Case Report and News. I'm Anthony Weeks, reporting for the Caribbean, America's single economy. Welcome to the program. And this evening, we're going to take a look at investing in the Caribbean and why the Caribbean is a good investment. And clearly, we can really tackle this discussion on various fronts, but we're going to take a look at a presentation by Michael Lee Chin as the keynote speaker at an event, a gathering at a forum that took place a couple of years ago. And Michael Lee Chin is an Asian Jamaican successful business person living in Canada, but he has an incredible amount of investment assets in Jamaica. And you're going to hear extensively about him making the case, and that's our slogan for the Caribbean America's single economy case, making the case. You're going to hear Michael Lee Chin, a successful entrepreneur, billionaire from Jamaica, residing in Canada with various investment asset, and he's going to talk about why the Caribbean is a great investment. And so I want you to, really pay close attention, because as you pay close attention and what we are about, and when we talk about the need to create a more, a stronger, better, stronger, interactive integration of trade and commerce in the region, you'll hear Michael Lee Chin reinforces that. Why there's an opportunity to strengthen trade between the United States and the rest of the region, obviously because the region is very fragmented in terms of the various countries in the Americas. And we are dedicated in commitment as to how we can position the U.S. Virgin Islands as a territory, being uniquely in the Caribbean, but also being an extension of the United States in the Caribbean, and the role we can play to help foster and facilitate better relationship of trade and commerce and strengthening of our economy to have a more integrated economy. And so I want to thank you for being part of the program this evening. And I hope that you find the information that we're going to share with you on the Case Report and News this evening. You'll find it quite remarkable when he talks about why the Caribbean is a good investment. He makes a very compelling argument, a very compelling case, and tune in as we listen to Michael Lee Chin make that argument.
Marquee portfolio companies in key sectors like telecommunications, financial services, and energy generation, and have produced a profound and positive impact in many countries. Today, Michael remains firmly committed to creating wealth for investors as chairman of the Mandeville Group of companies. Michael has assembled a diversified group, including an investment dealer, an investment fund manager, portfolio manager, and expert market dealer. This group of companies includes Mandeville Private Client Incorporated, Mandeville Insurance Services Incorporated, and Portland Investment Council Incorporated. Among his many personal accomplishments, Michael has received Doctor of Laws degrees from a number of distinguished universities, including McMaster University, the University of Toronto, Northern Caribbean University, Sir Wilfrid Laurier University, and the University of the West Indies, and York University. In 2008, Michael was awarded one of Jamaica's highest national honors, the Order of Jamaica, for his significant contributions in business and philanthropy. In 2013, Michael was selected by the Government of Ontario to receive the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. From 2011 to 2016, Michael served as Chancellor of Wilfrid Laurier University, and most recently, on April 27, 2016, Michael was appointed chair of the Government of Jamaica's newly established Economic Growth Council, EGC, in an effort to bolster economic development, and they seem to be having some success, by the way. As growth czar, Michael is tasked with leading a team from private and public sectors to advise the government of Jamaica on the adoption of a framework of growth initiatives, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm welcome
Yes.
to Michael Lucci.
Thank you very much, Ken. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have to mention that I may be a biased speaker on a topic that I've been asked to speak on, which is opportunities for doing business in the Caribbean. And I'm biased because of my own personal experience. And I'll give you two examples. Well, firstly, we are guided by a framework which would encompass the following dogmas. We are drawn to any area, or any sector, any business, any region of the world once there are three preconditions that exist. The first is there must be a difference between perception and reality. Because only when there's a difference between perception and reality can you create outsized wealth. The converse of that is when everybody knows the same thing, there's efficiency of information, there's no difference between perception and reality, there's no opportunity to create outsized wealth. The second precondition is there must be inefficiencies. We're drawn to inefficiencies. We love inefficiencies. And the third the converse of that is whenever things are efficient, there isn't an opportunity to create outsized wealth. The third is there must be a lack of equity capital going towards the industry, the sector, the region. Because only when there's a lack of equity capital, that incremental dollar is well treated. So, the Caribbean is a treasure trove given those three preconditions. So we were drawn to the Caribbean, firstly. I built my reputation and business success in Canada. But in 2002, armed with those three preconditions, I was drawn to invest in the National Commercial Bank of Jamaica. The National Commercial Bank of Jamaica, at the time, was being shopped. No one wanted it. It was taken over by the government. It was mismanaged. No one wanted it. So, because Jamaica met those three preconditions, the National Commercial met those three preconditions, we thought, bingo. But bingo was only when we were courting it. When we had to manage it, the realities of managing it was a different matter. But what we inherited was a business that had a 24% market share at the time, whereby Scotiabank had a 54% market share. So the question I had to ask myself is, how can, the general question is, can local institutions compete against multinationals? That's a general question that every local business has to ask. Can local institutions, can local businesses compete against multinationals? In other words, specifically, how is NCB going to compete with the likes of Scotiabank, RBC, CIBC? Because, to put things in perspective, when a multinational like Scotia makes a capital allocation decision, they can amortize it over 50 countries. The local institution will have to make the same capital allocation to keep abreast of being relevant in the marketplace, but the local institution can only amortize it over one country. Big disadvantage. Secondly, a multinational can, because it has a perspective in many countries, can bring best of class from country Z and aim it at you. You're just operating in your little village, you don't have that perspective. So generically speaking, local businesses are at a complete disadvantage. So the question is, I had to ask as owner, operator, chairman of the bank is there a way for local businesses to compete against multinationals? And we had to solve for that, which we did. So I'll fast forward, I won't spare the the boredom of the details. I'll fast forward to say 15 years later, NCB's market share, which was 24% and declining, is now 44%. Our major competition was 54%, it's now 30%. NCB is the largest and most profitable bank in Jamaica, and in so doing, we actually, in looking at how we did it, we more or less codified, hardwired a principle. And the principle is the following. The only way for developing countries to get out of that spiral of continuous developing. When was the last time you heard a developing country graduated from being developing? When was the last time? From other than Singapore? It never happens. The only way, and this is coming from the experience we have had from NCB, that countries will graduate from being developing is if governments realize that they have to have policies, regulations aimed at one thing: building strong indigenous businesses. And that was the lesson we learned from the NCB experience. And that's what the approach we took to have competed against the multinationals and, as I said, be successful. So governments, and I'm going to not just speak about NCB, but I'm just going to speak on a more major theme as to what governments should be looking towards doing. And as I said, the only way any country can maintain its long-term sustainability, and especially developing countries, is to have policies that are aimed at building strong indigenous businesses. Okay, so NCB, that's the NCB situation, history. We were guided by the three preconditions. Another example is in 2006. I became involved, I co-founded a business by the name of Columbus Communication. Columbus Communication, our first investment was an interest in Cable Bahamas. Then there was an RFP in Jamaica to have a second undersea fiber line linking Jamaica to the rest of the world. The incumbent then was Cable and Wireless. So at the time, when we bought the position in Cable Bahamas, Batalco, Bahamas, they were charging us $48,000 per month for a T1 line. 48,000. We said, what? 48,000 per month? No, we all know a T1 line would cost hundreds, not tens of thousands. That was the cost. We said, we're not going to pay it. So we decided that what we'll do is build an undersea network from Boca Raton to the Bahamas. When we made the announcement, the incumbent dropped the price from 48,000 to 24,000. When we landed, they dropped the price further from 24,000 to 12,000. We came in at 6,000 per month and we grabbed 60% market share. Right? Now, we were guided to have made that investment because of the three preconditions. Number one, there has to be a difference between perception and reality. Number two, there has to be inefficiencies, and in this case, lots of inefficiencies, $48,000 a month. And number three, there has to be a dearth of equity capital going into the region. So long and short of it is, we having grabbed 60% market share in the Bahamas, Cable Bahamas, we responded to an RFP from Jamaica for a second cable line. And we started to look shopping the world. We came across this network, the Arcos network, which Motorola had laid. It goes from Boca Raton and hubs to every single Central American country, up passes down to south, passes Trinidad, Eastern Caribbean, Dominican Republic, US Virgin Island, British Virgin Island to Miami. It was a ring. So we bought that. Motorola had spent $450 million laying that cable in the era of global crossing. In the late 1990s, we bought it for $80 million. We rehabilitated it and that was our telecommunications backbone. Fast forward, this was in 2006. In 2013, we sold that business to Cable and Wireless for $3 billion, right? So, again, most people, and Ken, as in his introduction, said the National Commercial Bank, over the last 14 years, has had cumulative profits of over 1.4 billion US dollars. And we've paid in income taxes over $500 million US dollars in income taxes. So, I started out by saying I'm biased because I'm an investor in the Caribbean. And my topic is opportunities for doing business in the Caribbean. I think it's fantastic because the Caribbean is a treasure trove of inefficiencies. And if you are an investor, you love inefficiencies. If your attitude is, I will embrace it and I'll fix it. Secondly, the Caribbean is a treasure trove for lack of equity capital because of lack of confidence, domestically and internationally. So therefore, it's a fantastic opportunity. And thirdly, there's a big difference between perception and reality. You wouldn't have thought that a bank over the last, a bank in Jamaica could have made over the last 14 years 1.5 billion US dollars. You wouldn't have thought that. That's not intuitive, right? But that's the reality. So the Caribbean, for those three reasons, should be on the radar of any intelligent investor. Now, so where are the opportunities? The opportunities emanate from the fact that there is a lack of competition in the Caribbean. Hence, the incumbent monopoly, Cable and Wireless at the time, could have charged $48,000 per month. But the problem is when, and by the way, the rate came down by over the next few years by over 90%. So now, from 48,000 per month to hundreds, $500 per month because of competition. But it's significant because now the Caribbean region with competitive telecom prices can now have new industries like the ICT industry, right? That was not possible before at 48,000 per month. So great opportunities because of lack of competition. The tourism sector continues to do fantastically well. But in terms of in the tourist industry, there's a huge opportunity for local businesses, for businesses to help the country import substitute. As an example, probably 80% of the consumption in the hotels are imported. And we have a growing business there. So there's a huge opportunity to import substitutes. Caribbean, great location, fantastic location. And this became indelibly clear to me about 10 years ago. I was in Harlem. I was being given an award by the Abyssinian Baptist Church. And Reverend Calvin Butts said at the award ceremony, did you realize that in the last 40 years, there's only been one high school built in Harlem? I was aghast. And it wasn't built by the federal government. It was not built by the state government, nor the city government. It was built by the Abyssinian Baptist Church. So the Abyssinian Baptist Church, he continued to say, was at the forefront of the gentrification of Harlem. But it's a problem, because now that Harlem is gentrified, the major Manhattan community is now moving in, and over the last few years, real estate prices have gone up by 10 times in Harlem. So the natives are being displaced because they're not traditional asset owners. So when Dr. Calvin Butts said that, I got nervous because I'm saying, we are working hard to gentrify Jamaica. And if Jamaicans are not asset owners, they're going to be displaced. No different from Harlem. Harlem is a microcosm. So every time I give a speech in Jamaica, I say, make sure you own assets. Because if you're praying for rain, make sure you bring your umbrella. And we're working hard to gentrify Jamaica. It's happening, so own a piece of the rock. So location, Jamaica's location is fantastic. The Caribbean, the islands, they have fantastic location. So so we can just think, what
All right, so that was the first installment of Michael Lee Chin talking about why the Caribbean is a good investment. Coming up next is the continuation of part 2 of him making the case. But before we do that, let me just say that the Caribbean, from a foreign direct investment perspective, better known as FDI, from 2012 to 2019, here's some interesting statistics. In 2019, the foreign direct investment in the Caribbean amounted to nearly $6.5 billion. That's US dollars, that is. Up from $5.92 billion, that's US dollars as well, in the previous year. That was in 2018. So in 2019, it was 6.5 billion, and in 2018, it was $5.92 billion in the previous year. The FDI, which is a foreign direct investment in the Caribbean, reached its peak in 2014 with over $8.7 billion. Again, so 2019 was 6.5 billion US dollars. 2018 was $5.92 billion. Those numbers are actually lower than what it was when it was at the peak of in 2014, which foreign direct investment directly into the Caribbean, FDIs, were at $8.7 billion. Let's continue with Michael Lee Chin as he makes the case for investment in the Caribbean.
time zone? Perfect time zone. Excellent for ICT opportunities. ICT, I said to the Jamaican government, why is it? What would it be possible if I could bring 10,000 engineers, software engineers to Jamaica? Would you give us the facility, the immigration facility, to allow them to come in? Yes. Because currently, I'm just blue sky here for a while. Currently, with respect to the ICT industry, Jamaica is at the bottom of the pyramid, just call centers. But why shouldn't a country like Jamaica be at the top of the pyramid, whereby we can provide outsourcing to engineering outsourcing, software engineering outsourcing, securities analyst outsourcing, legal outsourcing, accounting outsourcing? Why not? So yes, we are working diligently to go up the value chain. The conditions are there. So we should have Infosys-like companies in Jamaica, which we will. By virtue of its location, it's well suited. Other examples of untapped potential is medical tourism. Medical tourism. If you were anywhere from the region, Central America, South America, Caribbean, and you had, it's natural for us to automatically think, if I have an ailing family member, I'm going to Miami. Isn't that what we think naturally? But Miami is expensive for the average family. And also, when you have a family member ailing, you travel with a lot of people, right? You have to get visa, it's inconvenient. So why don't we build a medical tourist industry in Jamaica, which, by the way, will take advantage of the expensive healthcare system in the United States? And why should an American go to the Philippines to get their cataract surgery? Why should they come to Jamaica? They'd rather come to Jamaica anyway. So why not? Again, opportunities for those of us who are entrepreneurial enough to make the bold move. Other opportunities, currently, intergenerational transition from family-owned businesses to corporately owned businesses. That is happening right now. So there are opportunities there for investors. Governments, a lot of the Caribbean and Central American governments, they are in a position today whereby they have to be divesting assets for budgetary reasons. So there are opportunities because of the transition from government-owned businesses to corporately owned businesses, from the public sector to the private sector in terms of the privatization. So there are opportunities there. Opportunities emanate from the scaling up of existing businesses because there's a dearth of equity capital. Some fantastic brand names in the Caribbean, but they don't have the capital to scale up and become internationalized. Opportunity. Infrastructure development. They're bound. Bringing operational efficiencies to existing businesses. Recalibrate standards, stretch aspirations, improve productivity, digitalization, provide best-of-class methodologies. These are all opportunities. Consolidation opportunities in many sectors. It's fragmented. When we got into the telecommunications business in Jamaica, there were 28 cable providers. Small country, like 28 cable providers. There are many industries that need to be consolidated. Opportunities. Education. This is a really big opportunity for college to have more college and job-ready education. Huge opportunity for the Caribbean and for investors. Opportunity to flip the switch. You see, we from North America, and this is what gave us the confidence with Columbus, because we saw this this broadband play movie in Canada, but it was not yet happening in the Caribbean. So we in effect, figuratively speaking, we had seen the movie before. So all we did was to go to the Caribbean and flip the switch to play. Opportunities to flip the switch to start the movie that we have seen already, we have all seen in North America. And lastly, so those are some of the reasons why any rational entrepreneur / investor should be enthused. Now, that's the good side. There's also issues that a rational entrepreneurial investor has to be aware of before jumping head first. And the first question an investor should ask is, would I be comfortable standing in front of a judge in that particular jurisdiction that I'm thinking of investing in? Would I be comfortable standing? That's the first question one should ask. In other words, am I comfortable with the rule of law? And am I confident in the justice system? And in the Caribbean, it's checkered. It's checkered. So, and I'm speaking from personal experience. I've experienced expropriation in the Caribbean. So it's for us to make sure that those of us who are in a position, multilaterals, governments, it is for us to do what we can to enable and facilitate business. And one of the essential retardants to doing business in any country is corruption and a rule of law that is non-existent and a court system that is manipulated. And as I said, we have it also in the Caribbean. So I tried here tonight to give you a balanced view. It's the experience that I've had. I've had the experience that I've ran the gamut from starting companies that have turned out to, more than one, that have turned out to be multi-billion-dollar operations, to at the other extreme, to being expropriated. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, I'd like to get your opinion and see if you might add number 4 to your list, which in the 10 years I've had the privilege to be around the Caribbean, I've noticed. And that is, there also exists a wealth of indigenous resources that are underutilized.
Yes.
And given that the room really doesn't represent the group I'm thinking about, but was as your son left the room, we've shown year after year that government problem isn't going to be solved anytime soon.
What government problem?
Well, I quote I think it was the Minister of Martinique, who once told me, my indigenous resources are renewables. I'm thinking about the people. And he said to me, Dave, you don't understand the problem. You're thinking about business that have 10 years life cycles. I'm in power for 4 years. I could maybe do stuff for 2 years. We never match.
Yes.
So as long as you've got governments turning over, your ability to have that confidence in that government to build those local businesses is diminished.
Yes.
My question to you for number 4, indigenous resources, is where I am stunned every time I go on island. I'm looking at 28 to 30-year-olds running around with their iPads.
Yes.
We looked at building things to include the older generation. When I realized that her granddaughter was 17 with an iPad was doing her energy survey for her. So with that broadband, and we're seeing more and more businesses not having to have a geographic location, do you see some unlocking of that wealth of resources of Caribbean folk that have this great intellectual capacity to jump on the worldwide net and build local businesses, but not being constrained by the governments, because these businesses are just flourishing without any government support whatsoever all over the world?
Well, as Ken, my introducer, said, I was asked by the Prime Minister of Jamaica last April to head the Economic Growth Council. And one of the reasons I accepted was that Jamaica went through a period, has been through a period, last 20 years, 25 years of no growth. So Jamaica was the opposite of being self-satisfied. In fact, we were disgusted at ourselves. And there'll only be change. When you're self-satisfied, there's a lot of inertia not to change.
Yeah.
Conversely, when you're disgusted at yourself, then inertia goes to zero. So that's one of the reasons I accepted it, because we now have an opportunity to the country was ready to come together, and both political parties, truly, the EGC had an opportunity to congeal both parties around some national imperatives. Growth, one big one, growth. So the Economic Growth Council, and from a selfish standpoint, I saw it as an opportunity to not only do what I can to deliver growth to the country and transform the country, but also build a model that every democracy will say we need an Economic Growth Council. So over the last year, the Economic Growth Council has met with over 180 stakeholders of the country, and we have distilled and summarized, distilled what we heard into 11 initiatives and 8 initiatives and 111 sub-initiatives, all focused on growth. Then we went on a publicity campaign to make growth a topical conversation on everybody's lips. So we had a we have a tagline, 5 in 4. 5% GDP growth in 4 years. So if you go to Jamaica, you ask, what's 5 in 4? Everybody will tell you. What we did, we summarized what we do, those 8 initiatives and 111 sub-initiatives into a supplement, and we gave it to every Jamaican. So it's like, we saw this as a reset. It's like the Magna Carta of the 10th, 11th century for Jamaica, right? So now, we're now in the process, and we had to have bipartisan agreement. So one of the meetings we had was with the opposition. And I said to the opposition, look, what would make a successful meeting for us to do? 2 things. Number 1, if you invited us back every 3 months, so it becomes a dialogue, this is the Economic Growth Council. And secondly, if we can define a buffer zone of initiatives whereby you can fight on either side of the buffer zone, but don't fight on any of these initiatives, then that will make a successful meeting. At the end, the Honorable Portia Simpson said, on both count, because it's now national development. So you see, there are some endemic tribalism that occur, that are present. And I'll give you an example. Every 4 years or 5 years, whenever there's a change in government, the agencies of government, the board of directors for all the agencies have to resign, and new ones brought in. What craziness is that? It's like every 4 years, GE replaces its board of the entire roster of board members. That doesn't make any sense, because you're saying, implicit what you're saying is, those board members prior to me, they knew nothing. We know everything. And we have lost all the institutional continuity. So there are some big things that we're trying to achieve, and we're a role model in our success, that other countries will say, we need to emulate that format to manage our democracy, because this two-party system itself isn't working. It's too short-term in its thinking, right? And that tripartite, which is in this case, in the case of Jamaica, it's a tripartite, will be a two-party system plus an EGC, which will be the long-term continuity. So that's a generic answer to your questions. You're welcome. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So first of all, thank you for a very inspiring set of opening remarks, especially the 3 points at the front end. My question is really regarding the educational assets in the Caribbean, and especially the higher education assets. Whether or not you think that those are the best that the Caribbean can offer to its young people, and is it really important that the Caribbean do better in terms of its higher education offerings, or are you happy to have the best and brightest go to the United States and Canada for their education?
So, as Ken mentioned, up until a year and a half ago, I was the chairman of Chancellor of Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada. And when I accepted this role, I thought, because I was ignorant, that the real clients of a university are the students. To my surprise, that's not the case. The clients are the professors. So, that was the biggest surprise I got. These institutions, they also have a lot of inertia, and they're not nimble enough to move with the times. I'll give you an example. Today, we are going through a process of digitalizing the bank. So we have a full-time employee roster of 2,600, and right now we need 120 software engineers. So we went to the university, and we said we need 120 software engineers. We can't provide it. Went to the universities. Yet still, in 2007, well, every year Microsoft runs a competition. It's called the Imagine Contest, and it's open to every single country, every single university. And they send their best and brightest in terms of software engineers. In 2007, and I think two consecutive, 2007 and I think 2008, but definitely 2007. That contest was not won by a university from Australia, nor India, nor China, nor the United States, nor Canada. It was won by a group of software engineers from the Northern Caribbean University in Mandeville, Jamaica. So it is like, that's not intuitive, right?
No.
Not intuitive. So when I went to the Northern Caribbean University, I could not believe the infrastructure, the facilities that I felt like crying, because I said to myself, what is going to be the fate of these engineers? They're bright. We have no absorption capacity. So they're just going to emigrate, which is the case. So so number one, it's not a matter of quality, it's a matter of focus in terms of the universities, and they're now realizing that because funding is drying up. So they now have to be a lot more client focused. So they now have to come and say, NCB, what do you need? What type of trained individuals do you need? Well, we need 120 software engineers, and we help you to produce 100, and etc., etc. So universities, especially in the Caribbean, they're still lagging in terms of being relevant to the country's needs. That is happening, that transition, that change is coming, because the subsidies that they're getting from governments are becoming less and less and less. Therefore, they now have to be creative and become more relevant.
Thank you. You're providing us with interesting, provocative ideas, which I appreciate. One of them was that you said that for local businesses is sometimes, or usually, very difficult to compete against transnational corporations.
Yes.
We are small countries. I come from Central America.
Yes.
Our countries are small.
Yes.
Some island countries might consider us big.
Yes.
But we are not really big.
Right.
We're big in other aspects. But I think that the way to go, or a way to go to consider, is multinationals, which is not the same thing as transnational.
Yes.
Multinationals are companies owned by people or by governments from the different countries.
Yes.
Usually they don't work too well when they're owned by governments. We have the experience of Namucar many years ago, the Naviera Multinacional del Caribe. How do you translate that? I don't know. Namucar. Okay, you were not born then, the 60s. But anyway, I would like you to consider that. And then, don't forget that I come from Costa Rica. About 15% of Costa Ricans are of Jamaican ascent. And probably there's a lot of blood in the other 85%, a lot of Jamaicans. So there are more proximities and similarities between the Caribbean and Central America. And that's what Sally and her crew comes from, and I congratulate her and appreciate that she puts, every year she puts this meeting together. But I would like you to comment perhaps on that idea, the multinational idea.
So,
multinational corporations.
so I'll comment by just walking in. How much time do I have?
Yeah, that's not just easy.
Should I get off the stage now?
No.
Breakfast is at 8.
Oh, thank you very much. So to answer your question, sir, what's your first name, sir?
Carlos.
Carlos, to answer your question, I'll just walk you through how we went about it with NCB. So a case study will give, and the strategy will give you an idea of our thinking. So in 2002, March of 2002, we bought National Commercial Bank. And as I said at the time, NCB had a 24% market share and dwindling. Its competition was Scotiabank, 54%, RBC, 10% market share, CIBC, another 10-12% market share. Those were the competitors. They were all multinational companies. So I thought, how do domestic businesses compete? So the answer came in the form of answering the following question. What's the highest value added this institution, NCB, can give to the government of Jamaica, the people of Jamaica, right? Because if we can solve for that, automatically the reputation of the bank will be built. And once the reputation is built, confidence is built, the Jamaicans will do business with us. That was the question. What is the highest value added this institution can give to the country? I didn't go in and say, how much quarterly income can I make next quarter? Which would have been the typical question to solve for. We took a long-term approach. So, here's the answers that came back to me. Historically, developing countries have been denuded of wealth, going back from the colonialist days. Because whether it's Britain, Spain, Holland, France, they'll go in, invest, and repatriate profits, right? Dividends, profits. And when you repatriate profits, so too will the brain drain. That will catalyze the brain drain. So to create wealth, one has to be very efficient at compounding. You can't create wealth unless you compound. And the essence of compounding is reinvesting. So if you're taking your profits and sending it abroad or consuming it, you aren't creating any wealth in the local jurisdiction. So the first speech I made as chairman of the National Commercial Bank is the following. Although we are an international, this bank is owned by an international, a Canadian company, Portland Holdings, it will not for the foreseeable future take any dividends from this country. We'll take the dividends and reinvest it in the country. And so that was our contribution to reinvesting of financial capital in the compounding process. And secondly, we will build a business that is so eminent in its reputation that young, bright Jamaicans will say, I don't need to go to New York. I don't need to go to Canada, Toronto, to get economic, social, personal fulfillment. I can get it right here at home. So the building of eminent businesses that are head officed in the local jurisdiction is the solution, because there is no impetus for repatriation of profits. And secondly, there will be a place for the young, bright aspirants to get their fulfillment. Now, you'd say, well, but you need foreign capital. First and foremost, foreign capital will not come in if there is no confidence in the country. So confidence has to start within. And there is, in most countries, long-term pools of capital that are incarcerated by regulations, pension funds, insurance companies, right? Most pension, and this is a reform that we're going through in Jamaica, pension reform. The pension fund and pension funds in Jamaica can invest primarily, has to invest 95% of its assets in Jamaica. That's the first thing. Secondly, the bulk of the, by virtue of the regulations and law, the bulk of those assets have to be invested in government bonds. So the pension funds, that's a huge pool of long-term capital is locked in to investing only in government securities. So the first thing we have to do was to unlock that. Likewise, insurance companies, that's another source of long-term capital. So if the legislation isn't there to unlock that, we're being totally inefficient. So those pools, all of us in the capacity that we are, should be asking ourselves how much unlocked, how much incarcerated capital there are in our own economy that can be unlocked by legislation and create more wealth for the country. And at the same time, achieve the two goals of building strong indigenous businesses and keeping the head offices in the local jurisdiction. Stock market reform also. That's a source of long-term capital. So it's just for us to be a lot more rational. And I'm a mischievous person. So the World Bank had invited me about 6 months ago to speak in Washington at their Professional Development Day. So being the mischievous, and most of us would know that the World Bank has a twin mandate. Number one mandate is to minimize poverty, right? Number two mandate is to increase trade and competitiveness. Those are the twin mandates of the World Bank. So I said today, there are 500 people in the audience. Tell me, what's the highest value added government, any government can give to the country in which it is stewarding? I heard many answers. Provide security, build a meritocratic society, be fiscally responsible, etc., etc. I said, no. There's only one highest. I have many answers. The answer really is the highest value added any government can give to the country in which it is stewarding is to make the country wealthy and have a meritocratic way of accessing that. Right? That's the highest value added. Because you can, World Bank, do a good job at minimizing poverty, but a bad job at creating any wealth. But implicitly, if you create wealth and there's a meritocratic way of distributing it, you implicitly minimize poverty. So probably World Bank should change your mandate. I thought, whoa, they're going to chase you out of Washington. Anyway, they didn't. They asked me to speak at the Miami Herald World Bank conference a few months later. So the question is, if, and I'm challenging you here, if the highest value added any government can give to it, the country in which it is stewarding is to make the country wealthy and have a meritocratic way of accessing that wealth or wealth creation, who in government is qualified and who understands how wealth is created? Who in government, the politicians, are they fit and proper in wealth creation? Are they? No. They didn't have to do a fit and proper test to become a politician and become a leader. So politicians are not qualified to create wealth. Because to create wealth for a country, you have to understand granularly how wealth is created at the individual level. And have a legislative agenda to facilitate that. To create wealth for a country, you have to understand granularly how wealth is created at the corporate level and have a legislative agenda to facilitate that. And to create wealth for a country, you have to understand granularly how wealth is created for the country and have a legislative agenda to facilitate that. So if you have an agenda based on making citizens wealthy, making corporations wealthy, and behaving in such a way that the country will be maxed up, wealth will be optimized, then, but who is fit and proper to execute on that? Not politicians, because they just don't have that background. So World Bank, you're in the best place to do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I say this because I have an opportunity. I'm at the podium, and I'm challenging you. When you go back, multilaterals, go back and ask, how can we help countries? What can we do in our capacity to make sure that we help countries to think this way? Because that is the only solution in terms of getting countries to transition from being developing to developed. And that's the only way developing countries can remain sustainably developed. Period.
So Michael, my last question, or my only question I guess is someone can follow up is, when you say inefficiency creates that opportunity, you're not saying that mediocrity creates an opportunity for growth and development. Am I understanding your statement?
No, I'm saying mediocrity / inefficiency creates a fertile condition to transform from being mediocre to being excellent. or the worst case, from being mediocre to being less mediocre. Because the worst case. The value creation is when you go from inefficient to efficient. It's no different from if you driving in a wealthy neighborhood and you see this one house that is dilapidated. You just go downtown, buy a can of paint it. The can of paint may cost you $10, but the value creation is $100,000. That's the way of thinking, right? So going from the value creation is going from being inefficient to, at the worst case, being less inefficient, at the best case, being efficient. So when things are already efficient, it's very difficult to tweak, to create any value by going from the 7th decimal place of efficiency to the 8th decimal place of efficiency. That's hard.
So your theory for Jamaica's Economic Development Council
Yes.
is you made a proposition that says in 5 years,
Yes. 4 years.
4 years, there'll be a 5% growth.
Yes. Coming from a 10-year average of 0.2, that's 25 times.
So that opportunity requires what in terms of the government policies
Yes.
that would encourage that? I mean, that's a very tremendous growth.
Yes.
What is it that the first thing that a country needs to think about in its policy consideration for that type of growth?
Well, the first thing a country has to think, well, first thing, generically speaking,
Yeah.
one can only achieve anything if you have confidence. So the first challenge that the EGC had was to behave in such a way to engender confidence. So people have to be confident. So so confidence means there's a plan. There are people who are trustworthy executing the plan. The plan is transparent, and the plan represents a collation, a collating of information from a wide base of society. As I said, we went through 180 meetings in the last year with stakeholders of Jamaica, and make the plan available and measure. So once per quarter, every quarter, we go on national television and say, this is the journey we're on. 5% over here, we're here, 0.2. This is quarter one. These are the initiatives that we have embarked on. These are the milestones we should have met. These milestones have been met by the Minister of, the UD, Urban Development Corporation, Minister of Finance, whomever. And these are the milestones that were not met, and here are the departments and agencies of government that did not meet them. So we do that every quarter. So unless you want to be called out, do what you're supposed to do, your job. We're going to call you out. Has been non-existent in governments.
But that requires depoliticizing an economic development strategy, would you not say? Depoliticizing the economic development strategy of a country.
Yes, but again,
that's a big deal.
That's the big deal at Jamaica, and the opportunity I see here is Jamaica, because it was so disgusted that it's what has happened, that done, how it had impaled itself. We were ready for change. So therefore, then we become most creative and rational. And hence, the Economic Growth Council had an opportunity. It was started on fertile ground.
All right, we're going to end the broadcast there. That was pretty much the full report of Michael Lee Chin as keynote speaker at the now the shuttered Caribbean Central America Action Organization. He spoke extensively and he spoke eloquently about the investment opportunity in the Caribbean. That's it for me, folks. This has been a Caribbean Report and News. This is Anthony Weeks for the CASE Caribbean America Single Economy Report. And until next week, we'll talk then.